Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Wader, and we're back talking college football action. Bit of an interesting weekend, led to some shakeup and some interesting rankings here this week, and so let's talk about it. Let's get right into the action. We'll have an NFL episode coming out probably tomorrow, day after this episode comes out.
Whenever I feel like uploading it, pretty much
Yeah,
is pretty much.
whenever it comes out. And then just confirmed NBA episode that will be coming out next week as we delve into our thoughts on the NBA season.
Yeah. Hey, how about them Pacers last night getting the win? Clippers absolutely broke my heart. I hate James Harden more and more every single day on the roster, but it is what it is. I didn't see how did the Bulls game go? Did they play last night?
They did play last night against the Pelicans. I actually still don't know who won. I know they were losing in the fourth quarter last time I checked, so I'm sure they probably lost. All I know is DeJounte Murray destroyed his hand, and so that
Yeah.
trade almost instantly is gone in the trash can for the Pelicans. And I know that Lonzo Ball was a freaking stud in his first game back
That's what you
from
love to hear.
injury. So, things not at their best, but could it certainly be worse for the Chicago Bulls. But let's get into college football. Uh, and let's start with a look to one of the first games of the weekend last week. That was Oregon and Purdue. I didn't realize that this game wasn't going to be played on Saturday. It actually was played on Friday when we recorded this episode last week. And look, the Ducks handled business. They shut out Purdue 35 to nothing. They didn't get hung over from the big game and the big victory. They went on the road and got the job done. And now they set themselves up for what's going to be a very interesting weekend this weekend.
Yeah, I mean they didn't fall for the Purdue trap. Well, I mean that's just a job well done. Stronger teams than them have fallen before. So we know how the trap can be. So yeah, congrats to them on the win. I am interested to see what Oregon does this weekend because Dan Lanning, all I've heard about is this week that he shut off all media, like access for media availability for the entire week. So I don't know if
Wow.
he just wants his players locked in for Illinois or something else. I don't know. But either way, that it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday. But they didn't fall for the trap, which is a big win.
Yeah, that's huge. Could have certainly derailed what looked like a promising Big Ten season. I mean, certainly would have got them right back on the same level as Ohio State, who they just beat, and then put them behind a team like Penn State in that Big Ten. But then we look at BYU, and look, they survived the Ollie Gordon breakout game. This was a big start for Oklahoma State. I saw that BYU was down a bit. I looked at the box score. I saw that Ollie Gordon had had a ton of yards and 2 touchdowns. And I was like, wow, it's time for Oklahoma State to finally break out. They're finally going to get some stuff done. But BYU comes back to win this game by 3. So a good job here by the Wildcats to win this game and put themselves back on track. Are they the Wildcats? No, they're the Cougars. They're the Cougars.
They're the Cougars. And yeah, the ending of this game was insane. And what made it more insane was it was almost 1 a.m. whenever it all happened. So it was you're in a house. If you're with someone in a house, you can't really yell because you don't want to wake them up. But you're like, oh my God, that was incredible. Because yeah, this fourth quarter was awesome. Uh, Great comeback by BYU to take the lead. And then Oklahoma State kept on answering. Ollie Gordon, Alan Bowman made some throws for the first time in his career, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he looked good. And then they took the lead with a minute 13. And then BYU had incompletions on first, second, and third down. And it was like, this is all wrapped up. This is how the undefeated season for BYU ends on a Friday night at home. But then they pick up the first down. And then 4 plays later, a miracle touchdown. And it's I don't say it, but it seems like a team of destiny, right? They're giving me 2022 TCU vibes right now. That's the vibe I'm getting from BYU right now, and I love it.
Unfortunately, no one can ever replace Hypno Toad's place in my heart. Uh, I did not want to live after that national championship game, and I'm
Well,
not even.
Max Duggan, he was the legend who never quit.
I did after that national championship game. I did not want to be alive, and I'm not a TCU fan. That was how invested I was in Hypnotoad in everything that team was. But yes, this team looks fantastic, and they're riding the wave. And they're making some noise as we get closer and closer to that first college football playoff ranking, and we get to see our first peek at that 12 team bracket. Even though it won't be final, it'll be our first look at what everybody's thinking and
Next week?
how the committee is going to decide our 12 teams.
Is that next week? Or is that a week later?
It's a
I
week
gotta
later,
figure this out.
the same night as the election officially. So it'll be,
Really?
yes, it's Tuesday, November 5th.
Wow. Okay, that talk about timing there, folks. Yeah, we know which one's going to be way more popular to keep an
Yeah,
eye on. We all know.
big day for American history on that one.
Yeah, we
Um,
all know. We all know. Yep, you're right. November 5th. You are absolutely right.
yeah, I remember. I thought that date looked a little familiar. Um, but then we've got Illinois, who we talked about earlier. They'll be facing off with Oregon this weekend. They get another big win at home against Michigan. Finally, get Michigan out of the rankings, which was well overdue. But look, they just keep doing things right. Look, the offense isn't super huge and explosive, but Luke Altmaier doesn't make mistakes. He manages the game. He gets the team in a position to win, and this defense just does not allow points. I think this Illinois team is just playing phenomenal right now. I've been super surprised, but so happy to see this team play so well. And now they've got a big one heading into Eugene this weekend.
This was a great game for Illinois, but I just want to say anyone who is a hater on the fabulous uniforms that were worn by Illinois with the beautiful leather helmets, you're a hater because it was glorious. I don't care what anyone says, and it's already in college football 25. So that's how you know it's an epic jersey. I don't make the facts.
Yeah, look, maybe it's just because I'm a sicko for like having alternate jerseys, but I really like that part about college football that throughout the year teams will change up and have these fun different jerseys and kind of lean into it. I know there are teams like USC or Michigan that don't really have alternate jerseys; they just wear like the same old. But it's I think it's fun, even though you're kind of embracing that tradition. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm glad USC and Michigan and Notre Dame and Ohio State have kept these same jerseys for so long. But I guess I really shouldn't throw Ohio State and Notre Dame into that conversation though, because they do wear a lot of fun alternates. But I'm not saying get rid of the classic. I like the classic. Keep the classic. I think that brings that awesome tradition to college football. But the alternate uniforms are so fun to see, and so I like that Illinois brings out a fun uniform that also has historical relevance to the game. It's a reference not just to Illinois history, but to Michigan history, the two teams that played in this fateful game that really put this team these programs on the map. I really loved it. Love to see Illinois playing well. But now let's have the hard conversation. The Tigers they roll in Fayetteville. LSU gets the job done, 34-10 against Arkansas. And look, this was a close game at halftime, and I thought, even though the Hogs are down, this is the situation they want to be in. This is the situation they were in, against Tennessee. A lower scoring game, close on the scoreboard. Now you come out at halftime with the fans behind you and you execute in the second half. And what we saw was a complete drop off in the second half. Just a different team showed up for both sides.
I mean, listen, the I was terrified of a letdown spot for Arkansas, especially given the bye week. I know we needed the bye week for Talon to get healthy, but I was still terrified of the bye week happening and then trying to build off of it. But nonetheless, it was 16-10 at halftime. I'm like, they really outplayed us in that first half. So I was like, it could be a lot worse than what it is. Let's regroup in the second half. We have a chance to win still. Well, Taylor Green trying to make that pass near their own goal line that got intercepted. And that truly was when the game ended. I know it didn't end officially till later, but when they did that to go up by double digits, I'm like, that's tough to come back from against an LSU defense that played well, really shut down the Arkansas offense. And then LSU offense that after that really just seemed to control the game throughout. And For LSU, look, there were some big wins that really helped them by teams in the SEC. That sets things up for them maybe for the future and for a big matchup this weekend. And for Arkansas, listen, you just got to move on. I don't know how else to say it. You just can't get too high after a kind of win like that. And then just you can't drop too low after a loss because you're playing a Mississippi State team this weekend that, while they're not elite, they have looked better every single week this season. So that's going to be a challenge for Arkansas going to Starkville and doing that. But yeah, this was just a butt whooping by LSU and first one in this series that's not a close game in a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a disappointing spot for the Razorbacks. And look, I think you got to think looking ahead to that Mississippi State matchup is look, Mississippi State might see this as maybe their best opportunity to get an SEC win this year. They played Georgia super close. I mean, they're not going to roll over to the Hogs coming into town, even though on paper the Hogs are the better team. So they're certainly going to get a fight, and this is not going to be an easy game. But then we've got Miami. They win another close one, 52-45 versus Louisville. And look, Louisville is a pretty decent team this year, but they got up on Miami. It looked like maybe Miami was going to finally let one slip, but then the magic of Cam Ward and really the magic of this team getting the job done. Look, I'm not the biggest fan of Miami because I think they've had some things go their way that have hurt them, but I like Cam Ward. And I like the resolve of this team. They didn't need the ACC booth to get this one done. They came back and got this one done on their own.
How much of a relief is it for them more than anything that they didn't have to hear the replay booth at the end of the game where they're like, oh, great. Now we got to deal with
Yeah,
this crap for another week. But no, this was easily the best game of the day in my mind. This was easily the best game. Two great offenses going back and forth. And Cam freaking Ward, the Heisman hype for him is back. He moved up in the second on my books. It's between him and Ashton Genty right now. One of those two to me right now is who I think would win the Heisman. Cam Ward was incredible. He was phenomenal. Louisville's defense couldn't stop him, and it was a great game. And the problem was that Louisville defense, when they needed a stop, they just could not get the stop and get Miami off the field. And Damian Martinez ran all over him for that touchdown. So it was terrible for him, for Louisville to lose because this is yet another close game that Louisville has lost. All three of their games they've lost this year have been by 7 points. Every single one. They're a 4-3 football team, and all their losses, a close loss at Notre Dame, a close loss at home to a talented SMU team, and now a close loss to a top 10 Miami team. They played three quality teams really well, but they are struggling finishing games, and now they're sitting at 4-3, still with Clemson to play, still with Pittsburgh to play. I mean, they just got to work on finishing games out, and they might have a chance at maybe something special at the end of this year and then into next year. But they got to finish games out.
yeah, completely agree with you there. And this is a well coached team, but like you said, just not able to finish the job right now. Then we have the Volunteers getting a big win in a big spot. Look, both of these teams needed it 24-17 over Bama. And the Vols just get the job done. Look, Nico went down in this game. I thought, oh, well, that's it. Don't have to talk about it. Comes back out in the second half, and he plays some really good ball. The defense gets some big stops when they needed it. And look, they just made this night difficult for Jalen Milroe and that Alabama offense to execute, and they got the job done.
I'm just going to be frank with you. I was excited for this game. If you want my honest opinion, neither of these teams deserve to be ranked in the top 10.
Yeah,
Neither one really looked that impressive to me. Alabama's offense continued to struggle. They kept on doing false starts, just so undisciplined that I think Nick Saban, the famous quote that Brian Kelly said about executing his team after
yeah,
the Florida State game, I feel like Nick Saban would say that after this game. And then who knows what will go on in that locker room. But just lack of discipline from Alabama. I mean, late in that game, Tennessee stops them. It's 4th and 10. And then you got Alabama receiver punching a Tennessee player in the face, making it 4th and 20 to go along with it because it was after the play. And that made it more difficult, and that just hurt them. But I will say another thing, Bama should have been blowing Tennessee out. This was only a 7-0 game at halftime. Bama should have been up 17-0 or higher. So they let Tennessee get back in the game. And you see it with Tennessee, the plays are there for them offensively. There was 3 or 4 deep shots in the first half that Nico was overthrowing. That I'm like, if that's Hendon Hooker, that's a touchdown. That's a
Yeah.
touchdown. That's a touchdown. And then the second half, you saw him execute throwing the football down the field for Tennessee, which really helped them out and helped them to get the win along with their defense. We knew what it was capable of. But if they can get more consistency throwing down the field, this is going to help them the rest of the year. And they'll need to throw down the field with success if they're going to beat teams like Georgia later on in the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just no excuse. And look, I think the biggest thing for me is all the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties we've seen from Alabama over the course of these last few weeks. I think that is the honest definition of just an undisciplined football team. And this, I'm not going to come out here and smash Kalen DeBoer because I think he's a great coach. He's had a lot of success, and he had a great season in Washington just last year. So let's not forget that. But under a Nick Saban coach team, this doesn't happen. And a lot of these guys played for Saban last year. So I don't know where the disconnect is all of a sudden coming from because Saban is not just has nothing to do with the program anymore. He has an office on campus. He still comes and has team meetings. So where this disconnect is all of a sudden coming from, where these Alabama players are punching, shoving, kicking, throwing the football down the field, I don't understand it, but it has got to be fixed. There is not another team in this top 25 that acts like this on the field. And if Bama wants to stay in the rankings and stay in the college football playoff hunt, they have got to quit killing themselves with these penalties.
I mean, there's no more room for error. You got 2 losses already. You can't lose another game. You still got to play Mizzou this weekend, which should be an easy win, especially with Brady Cook not being 100%. But you still have to play it at Death Valley at night. And I've already made my opinion clear on which way I'm leaning if that's the case. So they still have to play that. They still have to travel to Oklahoma, who has a great defense, and who knows what their offense will be like with Jackson Arnold starting games now. Um, so there's no more room for error. And yeah, there's no reason to come at Kalen DeBoer with this because listen, whenever Saban got fired or not fired, retired, I should say. Why did I say fired? I
Right?
act like
He got
that was the
fired.
dumbest thing. That's the dumbest thing I've ever said on the show. Nick Saban retired. When Nick Saban retired, I mean you were talking about people, but in my head I'm like, who would want this job to follow up Nick Saban? And this is why I still respect Kalen DeBoer. He's like, you know what? I'm up for it. I'm gladly up for it. And so I'm not going to blame him for this. It just takes a while. And this is also a new coaching staff. Sometimes it just takes a bit of time to get the methods and the message across. He might say things in a different way than when Nick Saban said them. It's just it comes down to how much more it'll take for them to be less disciplined and then maybe get a chance at the playoff this year and then build off it for next year. But the talent is still there. They are a talented football team. They know what they got to do to fix this, and they got to have better discipline.
Absolutely. And then the final note we're going to touch on here, the Dogs get it done 30-15 in Austin, leaving no undefeated teams left in the SEC. This was a big win for the Dogs. Look, and again, I know I say this every week, but this is what the SEC wanted. They wanted an SEC that looks like this. A bunch of 1-2 loss teams after playing each other in these top 10 matchups. Look, that's showing that, hey, we've got the best of the best, and anybody in the SEC could win the national championship. That's the message they wanted to send. And look, Georgia puts themselves back on top. I mean, I know they're not the number one team in the country, but look, after the loss to Alabama, it was just 5 every week in the AP poll. Nobody was cutting them any slack. Nobody was saying, hey, you're better than this. And now they get to go out and prove that, yes, we are better than this. And like you said, look, Kirby Smart's a fantastic coach against anybody that's not Alabama. What, 91 straight wins or something now against
Yeah, something like that.
Alabama teams?
Yeah, something like that.
So absolutely unbelievable the way he's played or the way he's coached this team, the way they come back after that early season loss to prove that they're still one of the top teams in the country. I'm flat out impressed with the way the Dogs played in this one.
Yeah, this was my whole thinking, which is the reason I went with Georgia last week was literally everything was Texas. Everywhere you looked, it was Texas. You look college game day, all of them picked Texas. All the people saying Georgia's not ready for this. And I'm like, are you people stupid? That do y'all not remember the after they won the Natty against TCU? Georgia players were saying the people who picked them to go 7-5. Kirby creates false narratives to get his
Yeah,
guys motivated. You're giving him literal stuff he doesn't have to lie about, and he could just get bulletin board material from anywhere. You're telling me he wasn't going to have this team ready to go? I mean, it was the easiest thing I'd seen. Placing money on Georgia money line. I was like, they're going to win this. If Kirby doesn't, I don't know what to say. This just be the ultimate shocker because he knows how to get them fired up for a game. And boy, were they fired up. Not offensively, because let's be frank, neither offense really was elite in this game.
no.
But this Georgia defense looked like the Georgia defense from 2 years ago with Jordan Davis and all the guys that were on that defense. They were phenomenal. They made Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Don't even get me started on why he was even in the game in the first place. Sark, that was a panic move.
Yeah,
But
that
he
was
had it made no sense.
it.
Like
Did it?
end of the second quarter, I'm like, why would you do this? And then not only that, give up on him like 2 drives later and be like, okay, Quinn, you're back in. It's like, what was the point of that? I didn't understand it.
Yeah, that was a meltdown.
It really was. But for Georgia, it was good to get the win on the road. And I just love all the people. It made it funnier. I said that whole thing about bulletin board material. People were like, Kirby saying they doubted him. Who doubted Georgia? And I'm like, literally giving screenshots. I'm like, here's all a college game day picking Texas, all the shows picking Texas. I'm like, it was really, really easy to not to go with Georgia in this game. It was really easy for them. And listen, we got to address it with the fans, Austin. I mean, I think we learned a lesson. If there's anything, the next time we do a show in person, if you say something I don't like, I'm just going to throw garbage at you to make you overturn your decision on what you say. I mean, that's the lesson we're having here
Yeah,
with that whole fiasco.
yeah. This was a bad message to send from the SEC officiating crew. I did like that Texas took the initiative and right away started to send out discipline. I don't know if you saw, but a bunch of students who they identified from video throwing stuff on the field, they cannot come to a game for the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Uh,
rightfully so.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what should happen. But I like that Texas took the initiative. Now, maybe did the SEC say something? Maybe did somebody else say something? Sure. But I like that they came out. Nobody had to go public. Texas came out the next day, and a huge list of kids no longer allowed to come to Texas games for the rest of the season. That's just not how you act. Look, it goes without saying at any sporting event, do not throw things on the field. It is dangerous. It is so dangerous. I can't fathom the first grade or kindergarten mentality that you have to think that throwing garbage is a way to solve a problem. What I really hate is that while it was the right call, is that the officials took the time to overturn it because there was garbage on the field. That should be one of those situations where you clean up the garbage and you go back to play how it's supposed to be.
You want an example why you shouldn't? 2001 Jaguars Browns. Just look that up on why you shouldn't do stuff, throw stuff on the field. That's Bottlegate. I don't know if you've heard that one, Austin.
Yes.
Yeah, Bottlegate. I mean, a ref literally had his head split open from fans throwing beer bottles on the field at him. I mean, it's a complete disaster. And unlike the officials in the Texas game, the refs actually stood with their call on the field, which
Yeah.
I give them more credit for. Unfortunately, the one ref paid the price for it.
Yeah.
But
Didn't they end the game shortly after
no,
that?
no, so what they did was they called the game, they told all the fans to leave, and then they made the players come back out for the kneel down after all the fans left.
Wow.
It's a weird one. I highly recommend. So there's plenty of videos about it on the internet, so you could find all kinds of storylines for it. But yeah, this is just a lesson. Don't throw stuff on the field. But I mean, for the SEC, you just wonder who's going to be the one fan base that's going to be like, well, it worked for Texas. Why can't it work for us? Let's just throw stuff on the field. Someone's going to do it at some point, and they're going to be like, I can't believe this. I'm like, This is on you, SEC officials. This is on.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm waiting to see who this weekend, which SEC fan base this weekend pulls this stunt because it will happen.
Yep.
So let's get into this AP top 25. Look, our top five teams don't change, but their positioning did. Oregon slides up to that number one spot. Georgia moves up three spots to number two, finally getting themselves back at the top. Penn State stands firm at three, Ohio State at four, and Texas slides all the way down to five. I mean, this is still the top five teams in the country, so I like it. I like it, and I like, again, not that Miami's a bad team, but keeping them outside of this top five. They need a decisive win to get them into the top five.
And I mean, looking at their schedule, not to be mean, I don't see a decisive win happening for them.
Yeah.
It looks like their only chance will be in the ACC championship if Clemson stays really high ranked or if Pittsburgh stays really high ranked, something like that for the ACC. Which, by the way, totally off topic. Grayson McCall announced his retirement today. The NC State quarterback. He announced his retirement yesterday, I think.
Wow.
I think it was from a head injury he suffered during a game this year. He just called it quits, but was an absolute legend at Coastal Carolina and then was playing at
Yep.
NC State this year. So, great career for him. Yeah, these are the top five teams. There's just no question. They're just going to keep on moving spots until next weekend when Penn State and Ohio State face off. Then we're going to have maybe a chance for Miami to make that jump into the top five.
Yeah, that's going to be the next best opportunity, or maybe, probably not, but LSU could maybe try and position themselves for a top five spot with a win this weekend, which we'll talk about in just a second. But
Yep.
starting at number six, we've got Miami. Then Tennessee jumps up to number seven. LSU stays at eight. Clemson moves up one spot to nine, and Iowa State drops down one spot to 10. Look, I like this. Like you said, I'm not entirely in love with Tennessee being a top 10 team. They certainly haven't played like it as of late, but I guess they beat number seven. I guess they were the number 11 team in the country. I guess put them in the top 10. Um, I'm not crazy. Well, I won't get into that yet, but I also don't really care for the Clemson Iowa State flip flop. I know Iowa State didn't have their best game this week, but Clemson's also not really playing anybody. So I don't know. I'm just not in love with Clemson being this heavy riser every single week, and they're just playing an easy schedule. There's just not a lot of challenges. And the one challenge they had, their offense, I mean, was just flat. Uh,
Yeah,
so
I
your
mean,
thoughts?
but listen, I made my thoughts very clear on Tennessee, so I'll just save the time with that. But yeah, I don't get it either. I know Iowa State struggled, but if my question is this, if UCF was such a bad game for them to play a close game with, why are they favored against 11th ranked BYU this weekend?
Yeah,
Well, that's all I'm saying there. Like if they were supposed to dominate them, how come they're favored to beat BYU this weekend? I just don't get penalizing them for that. So for making a great comeback and winning a game. So yeah, I don't understand that at all. But I mean, listen, we're gonna have things work out eventually. Clemson and Miami eventually are gonna clash, and that'll get things worked out. And then same with Iowa State and BYU if they both hold and get to that Big 12 title game.
yeah. But here's my thinking. As we get into this top 11, I guess I'll say 11 through 15 here. We've got BYU moving up two spots to 11. Notre Dame staying still at 12. Indiana moving up three spots to 13. Texas A&M staying at 14, and Bama dropping eight spots to 15. Look, I'll just go ahead and air my biggest grievance out with the AP poll this week. Notre Dame, I just don't understand what's happening with the AP poll in Notre Dame. Are we banished from the top 10? I'm genuinely curious. Look, and I'm not saying we should move up to top 10, but how are we not sliding up to 11? We're winning games, and I mean, look, there was no question about the Georgia Tech game. The first half maybe wasn't so great, but a 31-13 finish. on top of a 49-7 finish last week. And this team has, after winning 2 games in a row, after a ranked win, might I add, this team has fallen 1 spot overall, cumulatively, over the last 2 weeks. Fallen a spot to 12 last week and stayed at 12 this week. Um, Look, I'm not going to be a hater on BYU, but why can't they be 12? Why can't they move 1 spot to 12 and us move to 11? I don't get the Notre Dame hatred here. They're playing good. They're playing well. They're winning games. They're winning games that aren't particularly close. I just don't understand it. Maybe a top 25 win this weekend will help them out. But I just don't understand the decision making, at least coming from me, as of late with this top 25.
Yeah. I don't know how to follow that. I'll just listen. Listen for Notre Dame. They got two top 25 ranked opponents left on the schedule. And that's a positive for them. There's that on the schedule for them, and also a trip to a Big Ten opponent in USC. That sentence still sounds weird in my mouth whenever I say it. But nonetheless, looking at the rest of them, BYU, I really don't get moving them up at all because they really were kind of this close to blowing it to a team that hadn't won a game in conference yet. Indiana, I just want to put my hand up on how wrong I was about my bet of the week with Nebraska against A&M. I mean, holy freaking cow, Austin.
Yeah.
That is almost as bad as my App State Clemson pick from earlier this year. It's almost as bad as that one, not
Yeah.
nearly. And then that over hitting in the 78 and a half game. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, it was not a good weekend. But looking at the top 15, listen, Indiana moved up, rightfully so, but Curtis Rourke, their quarterback's out for a couple weeks with a thumb injury. How is that going to hurt them? A&M will have their chance to prove themselves this week. Same with Bama. So, yeah, BYU, Notre Dame, I could see an argument for them maybe being a kind of flip-flop there.
Then at 16, we've got Kansas State. Boise State drops 2 spots to 17. At 18, we've got Ole Miss. At 19, Pitt. And at 20, Illinois. I'm not going to complain too much here. I wish Illinois was moving up a little bit more. They've got a lot of ranked wins. And look, I know not every single one of those teams that they beat is still as good as they were. But they're still ranked wins. I think that should still count for something. Uh, and I'm not saying that these teams that are ahead of them aren't better. I just wish they were being a little bit more rewarded for how well they've played. I know Ole Miss is an SEC school, and they're 2 losses, whatever, and one of them's to LSU. But it's like Illinois' one loss is to Penn State, and it was by 7. Uh, it's so I don't get it. I'm not going to complain as much. They're a good team, and they get a big chance to really prove themselves and where they should be. But I mean, I think in a realistic world where things make sense based on way teams have played against ranked opponents, Illinois should be ahead of Ole Miss. Ole Miss really, they're a talented enough team to be in the top 20, but they have not played like a top 20 team this year.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm noticing a pattern with you saying Notre Dame and Illinois should be ranked higher. I'm not saying there's a pattern there at all. Uh,
There's bias in it. I get that. It's coming from a fan perspective. But like at the same time, I'm trying to balance it out with like facts.
right. No,
Like
I'm just messing with you. You're good. No,
no,
they're
but
fair
I know that
arguments.
people at home are probably thinking that. But it's like I'm trying to balance it out with fact here. The fact is Notre Dame has won 2 incredibly dominant games against 2 decent opponents, against as quality opponents as Clemson's going to play this year because we play the same conference schedule. We also play an ACC schedule. Just so everybody knows that Notre Dame plays an ACC schedule. That's if that's news to you, you've been living under a rock. We're not in the ACC, but since our basketball programs moved into the ACC, we play an ACC schedule. So we're playing the same level of competition as Clemson, and we're not getting the same shake as Clemson, which I just don't understand. And then
Yeah.
Illinois is playing a Big Ten schedule. Their only losses to the number 3 team in the country, and Ole Miss has lost to Kentucky and LSU, who are combined, averaged out, ranked lower than Penn State. So
Yeah.
it just to me,
Okay.
it's just kind of monotonous. But your thoughts on 16 through 20?
I had to bring it. I had to bring it. But
No, it's a
listen,
fair point.
I don't get Boise State dropping two rankings just because they didn't play last week.
That's
I
fair.
didn't understand that at all. That
Another
kind of
reason to maybe drop Ole Miss. If you're going to drop Boise State for not playing last week, why do we not drop Ole Miss?
that's fair. Um, but Kansas State slowly moving back up. Pittsburgh continues to climb up. They play tonight against Syracuse. That's kind of a fun Thursday night matchup that I'll be tuning in for. Um, but yeah, this is an interesting 16 through 20. There's arguments aplenty, to say the least, Austin.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. At 21, we've got Mizzou dropping 2 spots. 22, we've got SMU dropping a spot. Army stays put at 23. Navy moves up to 24. And Vanderbilt joins our rankings at 25. We've done it. We've lived long enough to see a ranked Vanderbilt team.
Question, Austin, trivia time. When was the last time Vanderbilt was ranked?
2007.
You were so close. It was 2008. You were so
Uh,
close.
who was the
Yeah,
quarterback for that
2008.
team? Who was anybody on that team?
The only one I can think of, I think that was maybe the start of the James Franklin era at
Okay.
Vandy. So maybe Jordan Matthews, Jordan Rogers, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if he was there that early or he was there later on, but nonetheless, I'm happy to see Vandy ranked and Army and Navy both ranked. If you would have told me there was a point this year where we would have Army, Navy, and Vanderbilt all ranked, I would have said you're insane. But here we are. I'm happy about it. You went on one little rant. I'll take my rant with it. Missouri is not a top 25 football team. They are not a top 25 worthy team. They didn't show it against A&M in an absolute devastating blowout. They played terrible against a terrible Auburn team, and they're lucky an Auburn team didn't try worth a dang when Brady Cook was out with injury, and they let Mizzou come back and win. I'm surprised Hugh Freeze still has a job. If I was the Auburn AD, he would be gone already. But this Mizzou team is not a top 25 football team, and we're going to see that when they play Alabama this weekend. That's all I got to say.
All righty, now let's go with our team and players of the week. I'm with you there. They definitely haven't impressed. I'm going to start with my team of the week at number 5. I put Cincinnati. Look, I highlighted the matchup coming into this week. Uh, Cincinnati versus Arizona State was a game I was going to keep my eye on, and Cincinnati comes in now 5-2, looking really good in this Big 12 conference as one of these maybe late risers. They had an impressive win against an Arizona State team that's really looked super good. They kind of benefited from some kicking woes of Arizona State. Thought about enrolling in Arizona State after I heard they're having open tryouts for kicker. Why not? Go be the kicker at Arizona State. Just kidding. There's no way I could kick at the college level. I'd probably be terrible. Um,
Um, I I would tell myself that I would be really good, and then I go out there and try, and I'm like, you know what? That's just me hyping myself up with it.
yeah,
Don't want to brag. I was a phenomenal onside kicker in Pee Wee. They call me the best onside kick guy that they'd ever had.
I
It,
didn't know
it,
that they kept onside kick guys in Pee Wee football.
I was the onside kick guy for Bologna Red, and what's funny was my very first onside kick was a perfect one. I kicked it, it bounced perfectly. It was getting ready for a guy to recover it, and then some guy, I think we were playing, was it River? It might have been Riverview. He caught it and took it back for a touchdown.
Oh
And
my!
I was so mad, and my coach, who was Tyler Moran's dad, Chad, he was like, Austin had a perfect kick, and you guys had to go out there and screw it up. I'm like, yeah, guys, what the heck? Come on.
Yeah, you blew.
So yeah. Um, but yeah, I'll let you get back to your top five. My bad. I
No,
cut you off.
I'm glad we had time for that story because I did not know that. Now I'm glad I do. At number 4, I put Indiana. Look, this was a big week for them. Again, look, maybe not a ranked opponent, but Nebraska has proven they're a quality team. Matt Rule's got this team playing right. They've got an exciting thing going for them. And so Indiana to come out and get a big win and keep on track in this Big Ten is exciting to see. At number three, I've got Illinois. I like this win over Michigan. It was definitely a chance to slip and fall on your face and lose to a big name opponent, even though you're at home. And they don't do it. They get out of their own way and they set themselves up for a big matchup with number one this weekend. At number two, I put Georgia. I know they beat the number one team, but look, I put them at two here because they came out, they got the job done in a big way. But at number one, I went with Tennessee. And look, I know they didn't play the best game of football. I know it's going to be controversial to some people, but this was a game where two teams needed to get a win to stay on track for their season in the SEC and for their season in the college football playoff. And Tennessee rose to the moment and rang the bell. It wasn't the most impressive win, but they got the job done, stayed on track, and kept themselves in the conversation for the SEC championship. But let's hear your top 25, or your top, not top 25, top five. Jeez, if you had 25 teams of the week,
I
would
think
be,
I misunderstood the assignment if I was supposed to go
yeah.
top 25. But no, my top five, I am only saying this team is here because they won a top 11 matchup. And I feel like if I didn't put them, it would just be being called a hater. I have Tennessee at five. Well, like I said, I made my points about Tennessee very clear. So I'll just move on to the next one, which is number four, which is Illinois. Listen, they went out got a big win. They're 6-1. They're looking really good. They're winning the way that I would expect Brett Bielema to win games in the Big Ten, like he did at Wisconsin. So yeah, they're winning football. Number three, threw a little curveball in it this week, Austin. I mean, Ouachita
I,
Baptist took
oh,
down number one Harding this weekend in a massive upset.
wow.
I think I only saw through so far this year entering the game, Harding had given up a total of 13 points this year and they lost 17-13 in the game. And we know what kind of offense they run. Defending national champs too. Crowd, we had a field storming at OBU. So I had to get OBU some love on the list.
That's
Number two, I had to put Georgia there. I was with you on that, right with you, because listen, their defense played incredible. I wouldn't say as a whole they did, but they had guys specifically step up and have great performances. Had to put them at number two. And just for, I think, being as mean as I was to Indiana last week for picking Nebraska, I had to put them at number one. To
fair.
me, my whole thing about it was they have caught the big noon kickoff. Everyone's talking about biggest game of the season for Indiana, first time playing real competition, and I fell for it. And Indiana absolutely rose to the occasion. And listen, I knew this game was over at halftime, and then they just poured it on more, even without their starting quarterback. So they had to be my number one team.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Hold on. My phone went crazy, went rogue for a second. Okay. Let's take a look at those social media winners, and boy, was it jumbled. Uh, Indecisive as ever. This is the first time in a long time this has happened this year. But we had OBU, Georgia, and Indiana all collecting votes this week. But look, it came down to where teams were placed on our list. And because we both had Georgia at number two, they were able to rack up enough points to be our team of the week, just barely edging out Indiana by like 1 or 2 points. So a huge week for Georgia, getting the job done, putting themselves back in the conversation, and making themselves the team of the week on the Bold Tech podcast.
Yeah. I mean, good for them. I could have put OBU at one, but I feel like it just would have been too outlandish. I just wanted to show them some love. I love that everyone voted for them. I appreciate it. But I mean, this weekend, just in general, Austin, I mean, the number one team in FCS in Division Two, FCS, and FBS all lost this weekend. So, I mean,
Wow.
it was parity for the number one teams. North Dakota State and South Dakota State played a 1-2 matchup, and North Dakota State won a thriller there. Shout out to the Bison for that one. So yeah, it was a crazy week for the number ones. I had to show some love for OBU for a big upset.
Absolutely. Then let's get into these players of the week. I'll start with mine again. At number five, I went with Jalen Daniels. Look, Kansas finally got the job done. Jalen Daniels finally played a very good football game. They had a great week. Look, it's probably too late to be talking about a Big 12 championship berth. It's probably too late to be talking about the college football playoff. But still, there's no reason to hang your head. Bowl eligibility is still on the line for this team. I think they're 2-5 now. So winning out would put you at 7-5, well in a bowl range. So Jalen Daniels coming out and showing his flashes, showing his talent, and look, maybe buying himself a chance on an NFL roster too. Probably not going to be a first round pick, probably not going to be a starter his rookie year, but could find himself in somebody's system, playing well, played good football. Had to give hats off to him. At number 4, I went with Dylan Sampson, the running back at Tennessee. He's a talent. He had a great week running the football, over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns. Look, they had some inconsistency throwing the football. Nico missed some marks, got hurt, but able to find a stable running game will help you stay in control of the football game. At number 3, I went with Deshaun Peel, DB at Navy. This guy had 2 interceptions, took them both to the house for pick sixes, 143 interception return yards for this guy. An absolutely monster performance in the secondary. And number 2, bear with me here, Byshul Tutton, running back at Virginia Tech. Huge rushing performance, multiple touchdowns, well over 100 yards, and a big win against Boston College, who's proven to be no pushover this year. For Virginia Tech, they needed this conference win, keeping them on track this season. And at number 1, I went with Bryson Daly, quarterback at Army. 5 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown on top of it, over 100 yards rushing, over 100 yards passing. This Army offense is putting up some stupid statistics, and Bryson Daly's at the helm of it.
Really is. All right, Austin, trivia question before I get into mine. There are 2 teams in FBS this year that have not trailed at any point this season. Can
Oof.
you name who they are?
Let's go with Army and Penn State.
You got it. Was a Big Ten team for the second one. It was Army and Indiana. Indiana has yet
Wow.
to trail in a game this year at all. So, I mean, that's just that. Those are wild for me. But my top five,
Yeah.
number 5, I went with the new one, Mario Anderson Jr., running back from Memphis, 180 plus yards on the ground, 4 touchdowns. I saw the Virginia Tech guy stats and they were incredible. But when I saw you had him in your list, I was happy because I didn't want to try to pronounce that name. Nothing against
Yeah.
him. He's a terrific guy, had an incredible game, but I did not want to attempt that name because it probably would have been the worst one of all time. Just all honesty, it would have been the worst one. Number 4, the first of 2 defensive players in my top 5. I had a Virginia Tech guy from that game on defense, Antoine Powell Ryland. He was phenomenal in the game for them. I believe he had 4 sacks, if I'm correct, in the game. So yeah, 2 huge performances. Yeah, 4 sacks for him between the running game offensively and then pressure defensively. It was just a big performance by Virginia Tech on that Thursday night. Number 3, had to go with Jalen Walker. Listen, I couldn't put anyone from Georgia offensively on here. Had to show some love to Jalen Walker. He had 3 sacks in this game. This Georgia defense was relentless. They were phenomenal, and they shut down a really potent Texas offense. Number 2, Bryson Daly. I'm right there with you. He's incredible. I want to say, has he been in our top 5s before? Am I thinking that correctly?
Him and Horvath were on my top 5 a couple weeks ago, and I think
That's
him
what it
and
is.
Horvath were also in your top 5 a couple in the same week. I think they
Wow.
both had monster numbers one week. Maybe you left Horvath off and just had him, or the other way around. But I've definitely had Bryson Daly on my list before. I had him and Blake Horvath. Blake Horvath is Navy's quarterback, for those that don't know, those
Yep.
uncultured swines that don't know the triple option quarterbacks that have been tearing it up this year.
Yeah,
Um,
I remember having Blake Horvath on mine. I don't know if I've had Bryson Daly on mine, But anyway, he was incredible as he was, as you mentioned. So I had to show him some love. The thing also about Army is like they're starting game strong. I know I mentioned they have yet to trail in a game, but they're literally going right down the field, scoring touchdowns and getting on top of teams by double digits before they can even catch their breath in the game. That's what's getting them these dominant wins. And then
Yes.
number one, listen, he was my preseason Heisman pick. I'm going to show my man love when I get the chance to. Cam Ward at number one was absolutely incredible in this game. Steelers, if Justin Fields or Russell Wilson don't work out, draft this man, please. That's if Russell Wilson or Justin Fields doesn't work out. I hope they do, but if they don't, I think it's safe to say that Cam Ward is a very good backup plan. Just saying.
Yeah, super talented. So we look at our winners here. We had Bryson Daly, Cam Ward, and Jalen Walker all winning some polls. But look, this came down to placement, and this came down to certain someone winning multiple polls. That is Bryson Daly, quarterback of Army. You love to see it. I never would have imagined when we started doing this a year ago that we'd have an Army quarterback winning the player of the week. But you love to see it. Army's had such a great season, and Bryson Daly's been at the helm of it.
I mean, just the complete opposites. Team of the week. Yeah, Georgia. Yeah, that makes sense. They beat number one Texas whatsoever. Player of the week. What the Army quarterback? How did this happen? No, it's great for just great to have such different people for all weeks. I mean, I still think week zero we had Montana State running back room getting pretty much the award for that one. We've had people all over college football. It hasn't been the same week in and week out, and that's what's made it so much fun this year to do these. And I'm loving getting so many guys that it's going to make the picks for the Michael Penix Player of the Year award so interesting because we have so many guys that are receiving votes this year.
Yeah, it's just all over the place. And what helps it make it even more fun is when we get guys like Jalen Walker winning or tying on a poll from the fans. So the fans aren't just voting for the number one or number two guy. They're looking, and I don't know if they're looking at stats, but they're picking the guy that they think fits best. They're not picking the guy because he's number one or number two. They're not picking the guy because he plays for Georgia or because he plays for Alabama, Michigan. They're picking the guys that they think are the best. They're having some fun with it. And that's what's fun to see. But let's get into some of these game previews, and let's start with Boise State versus UNLV. Look, this game was looking at the beginning of the season like a game that would be a college football playoff eliminator. And I'm not going to necessarily go out that far. I think it's going to be a big game that's going to be big for the resumes of these teams. And I think certainly one of these teams having two losses is going to hurt. But most likely, these two teams will see each other in the conference championship game again. And I think that will more likely be the college football playoff eliminator, at least for, maybe the better team in that game. I think this is still a big game. I think you still need to win this game and not leave it to chance, not hope you get another chance in the conference championship. But I think these two teams will have another shot at it. But yes, huge game with huge stakes, a talented defense going against an unstoppable force in Ashton Genty for this offense. I'm certainly going to be tuning in to watch this game.
Yeah, it works out perfectly. Listen, some people are like, how could they put this at 9:30 on a Friday night? Listen, I would not want this on a Saturday mixed in the middle with all the other games. This is a time at 9:30 where all us sickos that are big football fans, all of us are going to be tuned into this game, staying up to see how it plays out. And I'm going to a high school game on Friday night. By the time I get home around 10:30ish, this game will still be in the second or third quarter. I get to see how it all works out. It's phenomenal. Man, oh man. I mean, the story of the game is going to be, can UNLV stop this run game? They're giving up an average of over 100 yards to rushers this year by a little bit, 107 yards so far this year. So if they can slow down the run, they got a really good shot with it being at home. But I mean, to me, you take the points in this one. This is going to be a high scoring game, and it is going to come down to the wire. And like you said, it is safe to say that most likely we will see these two teams meet again.
Yeah, I'm with you there. OU versus Ole Miss. Look, for me, the rest of the season, OU is probably going to spend their time trying to be a spoiler for some of these SEC teams with playoff hopes. Um, 3 losses probably too much to make the college football playoff, but still a talented team. And they've got a great defense and they've got an interesting offense that has potential. Playing against an Ole Miss team that knows they can't afford another loss. What do you think of this matchup?
What I think is I'm interested to see how Jackson Arnold is going to do in this game. He's obviously back as the starting quarterback for the team. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that works out. I'm not saying, like I said, I'm not saying he should have been benched the first time, but I had mixed emotions about them benching him. So that's just my opinion. But also new offensive coordinator. They threw him straight under the bus for their loss against South Carolina, which good Lord, that was a rough game for Oklahoma. That was brutal.
Yeah.
Um, but nonetheless, they're going to try some new things out offensively against an Ole Miss team that's desperate. They know they can't lose another game, or else they're out of the playoff picture. So I'm excited to see how it works out. I am not expecting this to be a close game, though, just because I don't know what to expect from Oklahoma offensively. Their defense is the only thing that gives them a shot in this game.
Yeah, and our next 2 games here, our final 2 games for the game preview, are going to be games that are not necessarily on paper games that maybe are going to be super duper close, but they're rivalry games. And so maybe that'll bring some extra edge. Let's start with Kansas versus Kansas State. Look, like I said, Kansas finally found their groove. They looked good last week. Maybe they can carry that momentum in against Kansas State. Look, that's an opponent you're always going to want to beat as a Jayhawk. Get the job done. But Kansas State, they've got the benefit. They're at home. They're playing some good football right now. And they want to win. What do you like about this game? What are you thinking about this game?
Well, I mean, the big thing is can Kansas stop the run game for Kansas State? I mean, similar to that, similar to that. We know what Kansas can do offensively if things are clicking. We know they can keep up, but can their defense get those stops whenever Kansas might need them to because of a Jalen Daniels turnover? So that'll be the key in the game. I really don't know if they can stop it, especially with it being at Kansas State. That could hurt them. But it comes down to stopping the run and winning at the line of scrimmage for Kansas if they want a shot to pull off what would be really a massive upset and cause even more chaos and was already a chaotic Big 12.
Yeah, it'd certainly make a mess of things. Um,
Yeah.
and then our last game preview here, Florida State, Miami. Look, Florida State hasn't had the season at all that they expected, but now they go into Coral Gables. They're going to face off against the number 6 team in the country, fighting for a spot in that top 5, trying to prove that they belong. This is a chance for FSU to have all that talent they brought in, finally come together, win a big football game, and at the very least, send a message that they're not going to be a pushover all year, that they can put up a fight. And maybe even more, like I said, rivalry game, and you have a chance to play massive spoiler to Miami. This would probably drop them out of the top 10. This would really tank their favor, people favoriting them to maybe win the ACC right now, maybe give some other teams some confidence. Look, I don't necessarily think this is going to be like a close game or a good game, but look, the things are there that could lead to Florida State maybe finally putting it together and getting the job done, and stop getting beat around this season.
Yeah. My only concern that I'm thinking of, and this is just kind of jokingly, is would Florida State, if Miami's winning late in the game, it's a close one, would they remember to take a knee? They took a knee last week against Louisville, Austin. They're learning. They're learning how to
Yeah,
kneel out a game. If only they could have known that last year, what that could have been like for last year. Um, but as far as this game, listen, like I said, Florida State a chance to play spoiler. And let's just be frank, these two hate each other. They hate each other with a massive passion. And, I'm interested to see can that Florida State defensive line live up to some sort of even close to the expectations that people believed it? And then how about the Florida State passing game? Can Brock Glenn be the guy and make some throws down the field against Miami? It's going to be interesting to see if Florida State can keep this a close game. I would be surprised, but it wouldn't be like a massive surprise if they kept it close. Because I've seen Auburn Alabama games where Auburn, a massive underdog, goes in and keeps the game close with Alabama for a long time. So I would not be shocked if this is a one score game at points, but I do expect Miami to win.
Yeah. All righty. Let's get into these game picks. We're going to start with number 12 Notre Dame versus number 24 Navy. Look, I'm not going to say too much here. I'm going to obviously pick Notre Dame. But look, I think they've done a good job stopping the run this year since that Northern Illinois game. That was a big, glaring error for them, and they've gotten the pass game going with Riley Leonard. It's not, 400 yards a game, but they know how to use him. He's playing well. I think Notre Dame takes this one.
Yeah. I would feel more confident with Navy. I could see them scoring and trying to keep up, but my issue with them is I just am not impressed by their defense. That's the thing that hurts. If they had a solid defense, I maybe give them a chance to keep this close with Notre Dame. But with their defense the way it is, and also this game being played at MetLife Stadium, I don't know why it's not played at Navy. Stop doing neutral site games. Make
Yep.
it stop now. This would be way more fun. But their defense, I have so many questions about it. I have to pick Notre Dame. There's just no question for me.
Then we've got number 20 Illinois facing off against number 1 Oregon. Look, I'm going to be rooting for Illinois in this game. I think they've got a great defense, and I think they're going to give them some fits. I just don't know if once this Oregon offense finds a way to get in the end zone, if Luke Altmaier is going to be able to keep up at the same pace and continue to not turn the ball over. I think he's a talented quarterback, and he's great at not turning the ball over. But when the tempo's up and you're going to need to get a couple scores against Oregon, if you need to get a couple scores against Oregon, you got to start throwing the ball a little bit more. I just don't know with an extra volume that he's going to be able to keep from turning the ball over. So I'm going to take Oregon in this game, even though I'm going to be rooting super hard for the Illini to take it.
Yeah, it's one thing, with not knowing what to expect overall, but to me, with Dan Lanning basically shutting down any sort of media availability this week, is me telling him he's got his guys locked in and not falling for this and being ready to go. So yeah, I'm very confidently going to take Oregon to win this game. Very confidently.
Then at number 20, or then we have number 21, Missouri facing off against number 15, Alabama. Probably a battle to stay within the top 25. Three-loss Alabama in the top 25 would just be absolutely disgusting. And like we've said, Missouri hasn't played their best brand of football. Uh, who you got in this one?
I'm gonna roll with the Tide. No, no, no pun intended there with trying to say roll Tide. But listen, the question marks are pretty much there. Their running back Nate Noel is out, appears to be out for the game for Mizzou. Brady Cook seems doubtful to play. It's just so many injuries. If Bama does not win this game by more than 17 points, I'm done believing in them this year because this is the kind of game that they should dominate in with all these injuries going on with Mizzou. They should win by 3 scores, in all honesty. So I'm going to pick Bama to win.
You're right. On paper, Bama should win this game, but I'm going to take Missouri in this game. Look, this is our last chance to be a Missouri podcast because if they lose,
It never was a Missouri podcast.
it it always was, and you just never realize.
It's a
But
Miami podcast. You get them mixed up. It's okay. It's okay.
this is our last chance, maybe, with this Missouri team because if they lose this game, they're probably out of the top 25, and they're probably not getting back in. So I've got to ride with them one last time, on into the night. I think Brady Cook is going to play in this game. Maybe broken, maybe battered, but he's going to light up this undisciplined Bama defense. That's my biggest issue with Bama coming into this week. They're undisciplined. And look, we've been saying it for the last 3 weeks. They've got to clean it up. They've got to clean it up. And it hasn't happened. I don't know what is going to change between last week and this week if nothing's changed from 3 weeks ago till last week. So I think that that gives them a super big chance to stay in this game. So I'm going to stay with Missouri. I'm going to ride with Missouri. Then we've got number 5, Texas, facing off against number 25, Vandy. Who do you got in this one?
So many different things to say about this game. Number one, in any sort of normal circumstance here, I am picking Vandy to win this game. Just solely for upset purposes. I'm excited to see what they can do. I hope they get the chance to pull off the upset. But, however, I have a bet. If you remember at the start of the year, we had our college football bowl takes, and we had one from some guy named David Green talking about that Texas was going to be beaten by Vandy this year. And we kind of laughed at it in the preseason. And I had to talk with him because we both go to UCA. And he's like, I'm telling you, it's going to happen. I'm like, you care to keep your money, take your money where your mouth is. And he's like, yeah. So me and him have a set. The winner of this game gets $75. Um, yeah, if Texas wins, I get $75. Vandy wins. Um, Tune into Sports Threads next Wednesday because we've agreed the person who loses has to cash out the person $75 live on the show. So tune so tune in for that. So just for that reason, I have to pick Texas, but I'm gonna be cheering for Vandy to at least make it a great game. And I hope they go out and give us a great game.
I'm sorry you put $75 on the line because I'm going to take Vandy in this game. Look, they're playing really good football right now. And look, Texas had a disappointing loss. And if they're gonna panic coach this Texas team anytime they get into some kind of trouble and just start flip flopping who's on the field. I don't love that look for Texas. Um,
Fair.
Andy's gonna be the kind of team that's gonna try and wear you down and slow you down. And again, they're gonna be playing at home. I like
Yeah.
this, Andy. I think this sets up to be a big week for them and a big win for them. So, look, I'm sorry, David. I laughed at you in the preseason, but I've seen the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm drinking the Kool Aid. I think Vandy's going to take this game against Texas and really solidify that dominance that they have between these two programs' histories, where I think it's a 1 game winning streak or something for Vandy.
I think it's Van. They last they played was like in like the 1930s or something, and Vandy's like 8-3 all time or something like that. But the last time they played was like in the 30s or 40s. It's been that long since then. So, but listen, yeah, he wanted to make the bet, so I said, you know what? And this was before Vandy was ranked and everything. So I was like, you know what? Free money. You know what? I'm not going to say no to that. I would be more worried if Texas had won last weekend. I think with them losing this past weekend against Georgia, they're going to come in and be laser focused in this game against Vandy. I'm rooting for it, and I don't know why you want me to lose $75. I don't know what I did to you,
I don't
but
actually. Sorry, right? Said that. Then final game pick here. We've got number 8 LSU versus number 14 Texas A&M. Look, really been the tale of two teams for both of these squads between the beginning of the year and now. LSU and Texas A&M have really found their groove. And now, again, I thought LSU looked really good after the Week 1 loss. I thought they looked like a college football playoff team, even in a loss to USC. But they've really played super good football. And ever since the Notre Dame game, A&M has really put it together on the offensive end to go with that great defense. So this is a fun matchup. Who do you have in this one?
oh man, outright first place in the SEC is on the line. So that's massive. Whoever wins this game will be the last undefeated team in SEC conference play. Um, And listen, A&M's a tough place to play, especially at night. We saw it whenever Notre Dame came to town, and we saw the environment that it was for that game, which was incredible. But I have been high on this LSU team since the preseason. I'm not going to back off of now. I'm going to take LSU to win this game. And there's a chance, though, that they lose this. They have the bye, and then they host Alabama. Are they looking ahead to Alabama? So that'll be the question. But I think LSU and Brian Kelly will have this team ready to go. I know it's not in Death Valley, but I don't care. I'm going to pick the LSU Tigers to get this top 15 win on the road.
I'm gonna go with you on this one. I'm tired of picking against you. I don't want to hurt your feelings anymore. At I'm gonna go with LSU here. You know, I like this LSU team like you do. I think A&M's played a much better game. But my big thing coming in this, you say it's tough to play at College Station at night, which it is. But we saw Notre Dame come in and do it. And I think LSU right now looks like a better team than Notre Dame does. They throw the ball better than we do. The run game's really coming along, and the defense is good. It might look better now without Harold Perkins than it did before. And maybe that's because they kept putting Harold Perkins in pass coverage. We'll never know. I'm not the defensive coordinator. I don't make the calls. So I like LSU in this game. I think it'll be a close, fun, exciting game like these two teams always put on. But I'm going to go with LSU in this one.
Okay. And real quick, just before we get to bet of the week, I do want to shout it out because I didn't know if we were going to talk about it. A big shout out to Kennesaw State for what they did last night. Massive upset over Liberty, their first ever FBS win. I was just really happy for them taking down a really talented Liberty team. So yeah, shout out to the Owls. To quote Reese Davis on College Football 25, who gives a hoot the Owls do?
That's fair. Um, I thought it was really cool to see that their head coach has been with them since they founded the program 6 years ago. So he's been with them all the way on this rise to the FBS and now gets that first FBS win. Super, super awesome story there. But let's get into this bet of the week. I've just got the one this week. I stuck short, sweet, simple. But what's your bet of the week this week?
Well, there were multiple I was choosing from, and plenty that I feel confident about. But after careful consideration, my choice is going to be Notre Dame minus 12 and a half or 13. I forget where it's at. I'm going to take Notre Dame to dominate Navy in this game. It's nothing against Navy. I think they're a good football team. I just don't think they're on the same level as Notre Dame. I will be rooting for you, Navy, to try to make a miracle happen, but I don't see it happening. I expect Notre Dame to win this game probably by, well, hopefully by 2 touchdowns or more.
All righty. And this week I went with one. Look, we made our game picks, and I'm fine with our game picks, but it leaves a little bit to chance. I think this is leaving nothing to chance. I like Vandy plus 18 and a half. You're at home. You're against Texas. Look, last time I picked Vandy, playing a top five
I
team.
know. That's why I don't like you doing this.
Uh, to cover the spread, they won. Look, I think 18 and a half is easy. I thought 20 whatever against Alabama was easy. It is. This team's a much better team. They're playing much better football, and they're playing at home, especially now that you have that win over a number one team at home. More fans are going to show up. More people are going to want to be there. You're going to have more support. This game will be within 18 and a half points. Maybe Vandy doesn't get the job done, but they will not get blown out in this game, especially if we're going to have some more panic coaching from Texas when things go wrong, which I don't think that's going to happen. But I like Vandy plus 18 and a half. I like really Vandy to win this game, but I think 18 and a half is safe, easy money. I think you're winning there.
All
Whew.
right. Well, man, yeah, whatever, fine. Whatever. You know what? Just for that, I'll ride with Vandy plus 18. But Texas better win the game. That's all I'm saying.
That's
They don't
fair.
have to cover the spread. They just need to win the game. I don't care if it's by 1 point or 20 points. I don't care.
I hope it's not 20 points, but that's going to do it for us here at the Bold Sake Podcast. We always appreciate you guys showing up and voting on our polls, listening to the episodes, watching the episodes if you're watching the episodes. It's been a fun college football season. It's fun to see even more engagement than we had last year, and we had so much engagement last year. We're having so much more fun with the diversity, and you guys obviously help make those picks come true. So it's been a pleasure. But that's Austin Wader. I'm Austin Hill, and we want to thank you for listening.